Okay, welcome to our first live interview. Those first few nights after you finished.
Yeah, I haven't been sleeping great, so I've been going to bed quite early because that was my normal bedtime when I was doing the thing where so I'd be in bed by 7, 8, so kind of still sleepy by that time. But I'm waking up about 1, 2 in the morning and then finding it hard to get back to sleep. So yeah, my sleep's still not great. I felt worse once I stopped. I think it's just my body was letting go and I wasn't focused on the recovery as much. So my legs swole up a fair bit. That might have been due with like running for 48 hours as well. That might have had an impact. But yeah, last like a couple of days afterwards, like last Thursday, Friday, and even Saturday, I felt worse than what I did during August. So yeah, it's just taking time to recover.
Yeah. There's just a comment on there from Windy Wilson just asking, do we need to press anything? So I'm hoping that people are going to start coming on live. It's a live link, so hopefully it might just take a couple of minutes for people to catch up. So maybe we'll just have. Oh, I think it's. Oh, there we go. I think it's coming. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I think it should come when it's good to go. Yeah. Hopefully people will start joining us. I just thought we'd show the video in a few minutes of that BBC did, because it's a great summary of your round. But I thought, just as people join us, Donnie, if you could tell us just a little bit about the background. I know a lot of people have done FKTs, fastest known times, this year because races have been cancelled. But I think this was always your plan, wasn't it? In a sense, irrespective of what's been happening with COVID.
Yeah, so I've been planning this for over a year now. So, I've had this in the back of my mind for years. So I've always wanted to climb all the Munros in Scotland. And I'm kind of a bit fussy. Like, I'll do my favourite Munros or do like the iconic, rugged, scrambly ones, 'cause that's the type of running I like. Where I've had very little motivation to go and do like the very remote Munros in the Cairngorms that are more rounded plateaus and bogs. So, it's kind of like, it'd be cool to do all the Munros in one go and get the Munros you wouldn't normally do.
Mm.
So that's how it came about. And it was last year I decided, okay, 2020, going to take a year out of racing, because that's what I normally do over the summer, and do this big adventure. So that's how it came about. And yeah, obviously planning it and researching it, obviously looked at previous records. So name's gone for me. Donnie Campbell had the record of 42, and he kind of cycled and swam in between it. And then in 2010, Stephen Pikes set the new record of 39 days and 9 hours, and he kayaked and cycled and ran. So I was like, okay, this is kind of like the set format for doing these big Munros, which is cool because it was a nice way of getting around, self-propelled. You're using your own power to get all the Munros and you cycle in between. So that's how it kind of came about. And yeah, how it ended up with a schedule of 33 days wasn't, I looked at Stephen Pikes' schedule and get, okay, I'm going to go under it. It's more Stephen Pikes' record for 9 days is really, really impressive, really outstanding. And I thought, okay, if everything goes well, I might be able to beat it. And I sat down and looked at West Maps and like put a schedule together, and it ended up working out at 33 days. I looked at, what I could do on any given day when I'm fresh in training. So, for example, day 3 was like 64K with 5,500 meters of ascent. I know I could do that in one day of training. There was a question, could I do that consecutively after big days and then carry on and do big days afterwards? And that's why I said my schedule was completely ambitious. And I was scared and nervous at the same time, because I knew any day I could do, but could I do them consecutively was what was a big question mark. I was kind of going out to explore.
Mm. Yeah. And I know, I think that it's that aspect of how do you train for this, isn't it? And that might be one of the questions. And people are joining us now, Donnie. We've got 53 people straight away who are watching live, so welcome to all those. And then if anyone's got a question, then please put it on the YouTube, the questions below, and I'll be able to bring those onto the screen. I've got a few people that I've already asked questions, so we'll ask those in a moment. I'll just read you one comment out from, I think a friend of yours, Jenny Rees-Jenkins. She says, congratulations, Donnie, in total awe of your achievements. I absolutely love the updates, and I do wonder how many jelly tots were consumed, or what your favourite treat to keep you motivated. So maybe you can answer that one first, and then we'll go on to the little video.
Zero jelly tots. They're actually my wife's favourite sweet. So that came from a previous video I did for Salomon when I got caught on the hop and asked to go in the cupboard what I had in the cupboard, and it turned out to be jelly tots. So they're actually Rachel's favourite sweets, my wife. My go-to food, it varied. Like salt and vinegar McCoys were great. Strawberry soy milk was great. Beyond Meat burgers was great. But yeah, might talk about it later on. But kind of you think getting to eat what you want and quantities of what you want is a dream come true, but it's not. It gets very monotonous, and you get tired of eating. Like literally, the amount of food I was putting away was more of a chore rather than something to enjoy. You know, you're sitting down every night, you know, eating stupid amounts of pasta and stuff, and you're trying to eat as much and squeeze as much in that you leave yourself full, and you just end up like crawling and staggering to bed with like a full stomach, and just like, oh, I need to lie down. Pretty much like Christmas lunch every day of the week in the evenings.
Excellent. Again, we've got over 76 people now watching, so that's great. So I think we'll just show the little 2-minute video now, Donnie. And this was a video you did pretty well straight afterwards with BBC. And I think it just gives a lovely summary of what you did and what you achieved. And just last 2 minutes. So we'll show that to everybody. And then we'll come back and then we'll get on to the questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's cool. No problem.
I'm Donnie Campbell. I've just ran all 282 Munros in Scotland in 31 days, 23 hours and 2 minutes while cycling and kayaking in between them. I think someone told me about 23 years was the average time someone takes to complete all the Munros. Looked at the record and I thought, well, that's a great record, but I reckon I could probably get close to it or maybe beat it. My mentality as an athlete is very competitive, so I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. Generally, my days would look like alarm clock at 5 a.m, breakfast, start running by 6, average day would be 12 hours of running. Apart from the last 2 days, the longest day was 16 hours. I was self-propelled style, so I was basically running, walking, climbing the hills, cycling in the road sections in between, or mountain biking, and a camper van that just followed me about. So basically that's my support vehicle where I'd be able to resupply, sleep and eat and stuff like that. Day 17 was probably the lowest point. It was just like Groundhog Day. I've been doing this for over 2 weeks. It's, you know, big long days, smashing myself. My body was starting to kind of feel it. And yet I wasn't really halfway, or I didn't feel like I was halfway. I felt like I was still miles away from the finish. And that was probably the lowest day, just mentally, just that day just for some reason just got to me. But after that, like, I moved things about the following day and kind of managed to get back on track, and then just picked away at it. Because it was such an ambitious goal and such a long challenge, I never kind of really let myself believe I would get to Ben Hope. Like, it was a dream, but I've never kind of like try and let it become a reality in my mind until I made it. It's just kind of surreal being on top of Ben Hope at 5 a.m. with some close friends, and it was really, really nice. Yes, it's hard, but you know, getting up every day and running up and down hills and doing something you love every day and not having to worry about life in general is a nice way to live for a month.
Excellent. So, okay, that was a great little summary, I think, wasn't it, Donnie? And I think you did some filming for the adventure show, didn't you? And hopefully that will be something we'll be able to see in a few weeks or months' time, however long it takes them.
Yeah, so that should be coming out at the end of this month or beginning of October. I was getting confused months, yeah. So at the end of this month or beginning of September. So yeah, probably in 3 to 4 weeks' time. Keep an eye on social media channels or the BBC Adventure Show social media channels, and it'll be posted out. It's going out with the Aviemore Triathlon as well, which they're recording next week.
Right. And again, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to our Run to the Hills, because I know you're very busy with lots of media requests. I've already listened to a really good podcast, Always Another Adventure, And that was a really good little good interview. So I recommend that people have a look at that, listen to that one as well. And I think you did one today, didn't you? And there'll be others in the coming weeks. So thanks for coming on ours. And I think we'll just start looking at some of these questions, if that's okay. Because I think one of the things I was keen to do with this opportunity to interview was not just for me to ask questions, but to try and get people who are watching. And we've already got some questions which I'll bring in. But I'll start with Jamie at Aaron's, and she had a few questions, but she said, in the benefits of hindsight, is there anything you wish you'd done differently? So we'll start with that one.
Not really, to a certain extent. Like, I bet my schedule, maybe only by day. I felt strong throughout, so cardiovascular wise, so fitness wise, I felt like I was managing it, my body was adapting okay. The things I struggled with injuries. That was right anterior tibia tendinopathy, which is the tendon run down the front of the ankle. Got really inflamed, managed to manage that, and then on day 17 my left one went, and that kind of put me on a downward spiral. And then there's a few other niggles, so you can't really predict that's going to happen, and you can't really train for it. So for example, my biggest week in training, so my peak week in training was 30 hours, and my smallest week off the round was 75 hours. So it's unrealistic to prepare your body fully for what you're about to put it through. So to answer the question, the only thing I really changed, if I wanted to go faster, would have more support runners so they could carry my kit. So I only had people join me for like 64 of the Munros. So if you had people join you for every Munro and carry your kit, like you see in some of the FKTs on like the Bob Graham and that, you're going to go faster, you're going to save more energy. So I've been asked that question, do you think doing it in a month, going sub 31 or sub 30 days is possible? I say yes. Get a good weather window like I had, which was near perfect conditions, and just have more support so you don't have to carry any kit, and maybe involve a bigger team than just my wife Rachel as support, and you probably go quicker.
Yeah. And I think as well, in a sense, your whole life has been preparing for this, isn't it? It's not as if you did a 12-week training plan. You've been building up. The amount of things you've done over the last 15, 20 years has almost prepared your body for this amount of effort. Yeah,
as I said in other interviews, I've probably been training my whole life for this. Growing up in Skye, playing shinny, which is quite a physical sport, but you're used to playing, it was a winter season, so you're used to playing in like winter and snow and stuff like that. So you're used to the cold. And then my time in the Marines, so I joined the Marines at age 17 and spent 3.5 years there. And then you study sports coaching and development, so there's the science side coming into it. And then I've been running up and down hills for like over a decade now. And all these experiences, all this adds up. So I've been training all my life for this.
Yeah. Okay, just another question from Jamie. She talked about your sleep. She read that you slept 8 hours a night. That's incredible given the distances. Did you have a sleep plan in mind, or did you just take what rest you could get? So
I was on average, I had 8 hours sleep. Some nights were slightly less because of how the days worked and how the Munros are spread out. So it's not like I could just go and run 12 hours straight and stop. Sometimes, for example, if you went to Ben Alder, you have to commit to doing all of them or be prepared to bivvy out, because it's such a long way back to the road. You'd just be doubling your time and distance. So, for example, that day it took me 14 and a half hours. So that night I might have only got 7 hours sleep. And then, for example, when I did Torridon, which was one of my easier days towards the end, it was like 6 Munros and 3,000 metres of ascent. I was done by 3 o'clock. So I was in bed for over 10 hours. But I was very strict. When you sleep is when your body recovers most. So pretty much I would finish running. I would either grab a shower if I was having a shower, and then get into this machine, which is called a recovery pump. So it's basically big compression bags for your legs, which helps push the fluid back to the central body. So I'm sitting that, have my dinner. So I'll probably be in that for about an hour, dinner, and then straight to bed. So, if I was finishing running at 6 o'clock, I could be in bed by 8, 8:30, and then my alarm clock was 5 o'clock. So you can see there, I'm getting my 8 hours sleep, if not more, but I'm just being very strict with my bedtime. I'm not wasting time. I was very conscious of, as soon as I finish, I need to recover, get food on board, and then I need to get to bed. And that was it. So that's how I ended up averaging 8 hours. Sometimes it's slightly more, sometimes it's slightly less.
Yeah, I think that's true of any multi-day events, isn't it, Donnie? If if you're doing an event, the actual rest time, if you see that as part of the race or part of the challenge, that's a key thing, isn't it? Whereas if you think, I finished running now and then I don't start again until the next morning, and if you don't see that recovery time as a key part of the challenge, then you are going to waste time, aren't you?
Yeah, recovery is just as important. Even in training, recovery is important. If you don't give yourself time to recover, your body doesn't get fitter.
Yeah.
And in a multi-day thing like this, recovery and refueling is just important. So the eating I was doing in the evenings, that's why I was forcing myself. It wasn't enjoyable to force yourself to eat like Christmas lunch-sized portions every night so that you get that feeling of a really full stomach and all you can do is lie down. That was literally what I was doing. I was eating myself till I felt a bit sick. Wow. And then I'd just crawl off the bed. So it's not fun, but I knew I had to get the calories in. I knew I had to get the fuel in to keep going like 12 hours the next day.
Yeah. Actually, that'll fit in really well because we got a question from Stephen Welsh and he says, congratulations, Donnie, incredible. He said, I read that you are on a plant-based diet. What what volume of foods were you consuming? So you've talked about the volume, but can you tell us a little bit about whether it was plant-based or what was the actual substance of it?
Okay, so I'm normally plant-based, or I would say 95% plant-based. I've been for the last couple of years. For this, I was a bit more relaxed, so I didn't have any meat. The only thing, meat I had was, I had 2 fish suppers from a takeaway, so that's the only meat. The rest was just dairy or milk, so I ate chocolate bars, Parmesan cheese on top of pasta, because I was eating a lot of pasta. So, for example, I'd be eating like spinach and ricotta tortellini, or just spaghetti with like tomato sauce and veg and cheese grated on top. I mentioned it before, I'd be on meat burgers, which is like a vegan burger stacked with protein. Like I'd be having free burgers. Where possible, I do like pizza, so like in Aviemore, quite a funny story. So we came off the Cairngorms and a friend came up, a friend in sports massage, and they agreed to go and collect some pizzas in Aviemore for us. So she went to collect the pizzas and he phoned me up thinking he'd got the wrong order because basically it was just for myself and my wife Rachel, and there was 4 pizzas in the order. He's like, did you really order 4 pizzas? I was like, yes, 2 for my dinner, 1 for Rachel and 1 for my lunch. So that kind of gives you an idea of the quantities. And again, it's kind of just that type of food I was eating. Basically, pizzas, pastas, rice,
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're up to 100 people watching live, Donnie, and we got lots of questions. I'll start feeding those in. I've got one more that we had from before, and this is from Jenny Yeo. She says, amazing feat. Donnie looked like he was struggling with a tendon issue fairly early on. So how did you get through this, and how did the rest of him hold up? So a bit of a question about that injury and just how your body held up altogether.
So it was the right anterior tibialis tendon started flaring up on day 5, 6. Day 7 we'll forget about because it was agony. How did I manage it? So I'm quite friendly with Dr. Andrew Murray, who ran from John O'Groats to Sahara, and I remember him talking about he got tendinopathy in the Achilles tendon, and after a while it went away. So that's where I got my confidence, knowing if I could manage it, it would go away. So I was drawing on someone else's previous experience, going, okay, tendinopathy can go away. It's not a textbook answer, but if you manage it correctly, you can help yourself. So things I was doing was any possible opportunity to have ice in it, I would have it elevated. That compression bag, the recovery pump thing I was talking about, really good for getting the inflammation out. And also I was taking a very strong anti-inflammatory as well, which kind of helped. And then also just kind of trying not to aggravate it. I taped it up for a few days. And then obviously I was favouring my left side and trying to protect my right, using poles as well. So I was using trekking poles. So all these kind of combinations and just trying to manage it as best you can. And it was sore for like 5 or 6 days. It slowly improved, but it never really healed because it's still sore now, but it was manageable.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Because if you go to a physio with an injury, one of the first things to say is just give it a few days rest and elevate it and ice it. But that wasn't an option, was it? To give it a rest.
No, so you kind of think, what can I do? And hence getting into bed for as long time as possible. Sleeping with elevated was the other thing I was doing. So I had a couple of pillows under my legs every night, sleeping with my feet elevated. So every little thing helps. So, you're just doing the little things and making sure you can get all them right. And, I got lucky to a certain extent. It kind of settled down enough that I could keep going without too much pain.
I think one of the things as well, Donnie, I noticed watching, reading your reports each day on Facebook, because if you set yourself a certain number of Munros to do or a certain part, you had a chunk each day. If you were going well, that might take you 12 hours. But with the injury, you were slowing down a bit, so it might take you 14 hours. So that would have an impact on the next day, wasn't it? So it's not just the actual the injury, it's the impact that it'll have on the rest of the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, if you're out for longer, you're reducing your recovery time before your next day. But again, you're not going as hard, as you might not be causing as much muscle damage or using as much energy. So it's kind of like catch-22. That was the thing I was trying to balance, was efficiency but not cause muscle damage, because if you cause muscle damage, then you're going to break down the muscle and you get DOMs or just whatever, and you lose power. So you were kind of trying to go at an intensity that you were efficient, so you weren't out for a really long period. Well, I was out for a really long period of time. 12 hours is a long time being in the hills.
Yeah.
But, within context, I was trying to be efficient to move quickly in the hills without causing too much muscle breakdown each day. And again, taking the scientific approach, there's studies showing that if you consume like above 80 grams of carbohydrate an hour or more when you're moving and running, that reduces muscle breakdown. So that was really focused on, making sure I was eating enough while I was out running or moving in the mountains. So I wasn't necessarily running all the time.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, because it is a real balance, isn't it? If you go too quick, then you might break down, but you need to be moving quick enough to get it done. But you obviously, I think, congratulations for managing that really well. Okay, so I think we'll go on to the questions that we've got that people have put on live tonight. So the first one is Alex Dieter, and he says, what was the hardest part? Now, I know you talked about some tough days, but what would you say was the hardest part of the whole challenge?
There's so many hard bits. Like, you could look at the preparation, being able to put everything in place to be successful. So getting a support crew, planning the route, all that's really logistically hard, and there's a lot of planning involved. And then also that you got the physical side. So, if someone asked me what was the physically hardest point, I would say probably the last 2 days, because I ran for 48 hours straight. That's hard, but it wasn't mentally hard because I was close to the finish, and I knew I was making my way to the finish, where the hardest bit mentally was probably about day 17, because I'd been running for 17 days and doing big days, 12, 14 hours. But I still had over another 14 days to go. So, I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. Every day was a big day, but I couldn't get any closer to Ben Hope or the finish. And you're just kind of that combination of, on day 17, my left ankle went. So basically, I mentioned my right ankle and anterior tibia. I'd be managed that and overcompensated my left. Then on my left, started going on day 17. So basically, that just kind of set me off in the downward spiral. It's like, I've got another week of complete agony trying to manage my left, but I can't compensate with my right because my right's already sore. And you're just like, this is rubbish. And then you start questioning why you're doing it. And, all the negative thoughts, like, what's the point of running up and down hills? There's no significance to it. Why am I here? I've been doing 12 hours. I've got nothing to prove to anyone. I could just go home and just have a comfortable life. So I go back to a nice house, nice warm bed, not have to worry about eating loads of food. But, that was never a question of giving up. That was how I was feeling. I shared that with my wife, and I shared it on social media that evening. It's like, this is how I feel. But it was never a question of I'm going home. I've described it in other interviews. It's like having a bad day at work. You'll go home and you'll complain to your wife or your partner. The next day you get up and you go to work. Yeah. You don't just quit. You've had one bad day or a couple of bad days.
Yeah.
You work through the problems, or you kind of just keep battering away and hope things are going to improve. And that was kind of the situation. I was like, well, for August, my job was to get up and run Munros. It wasn't like I was going to take a day off. That was what I was going to do. So the next day, day 18, I got up, 5 a.m., out the door, running by 6. That's just routine, discipline, all you can say. And the best way to describe it is that kind of work scenario is like you have a bad day at work, doesn't mean you quit. You get up and you go into work the next day, and that's what I was doing.
Yeah. I must admit, Donnie, because on the 15th of September, that's when you went up Ben Lomond, and that was the most southerly one, and it worked out great because it was Saturday. So Katrina and myself, we went up and we saw you on the top there, and I took a little video and I put that on. And I must admit, it did surprise me that you were saying then that you just feel this is hard. Not that I thought it wouldn't be, but then to hear that that's how you felt on day 15, and it probably went the next 2 days was pretty tough. But you did get through that, and again, that shows a lot about your resilience and willingness. And even though maybe you wanted to quit, you were never going to, were you? It was always gonna. Yeah.
But that came down to preparation. I prepared myself so that I knew with these things, like I knew the hardest bit mentally is going to be the middle of it, because you're so far away from the start and you're so far away from the finish. And you're like Groundhog Day. And I said that on top of Ben Lomond, and like my head was in a negative place because I'd been pushing so hard, and like the novelty of doing the challenge is worn off. I was like into Groundhog Day. Every day I woke up, every day I went to the hills, every day I did like 12 hours. Big days, and then the end wasn't getting any closer because I was still like over 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and you're just like, yeah, this is hard. I'm not getting anywhere to the finish, and that's why I was like, I may have looked not too bad, and I'm moving all right. I couldn't complain about that, but I was just like, yes, such a negative space, and it's just like, it might have been a bit of loss of focus because my mantra for the start was be patient, take one Munro at a time. One day at a time. So obviously that was trying to slow myself down, being quite an athlete. The tendency is like when you're fresh, is go as fast as possible, get one over and done with. And it's like, okay, take one Munro at a time, be patient, and one day at a time. And obviously I was looking past the next day or the Munro I was on. I was looking at the bigger picture, which can get overwhelming. And basically that's what I did. So basically what I had to do was, just kind of try and refocus on just a day at a time and just work through the problems on that day. And that's what I did. And it kind of just picked away at it.
Yeah, no, well, yeah. And it's interesting because I think it's similar to a one-day race. You go through these same things, you get halfway, and it's the same principle, isn't it? But yours is over 31 days rather than 24 hours. Okay, the next question we've got is from Pro Tay Run Bike Swim, and they say, did you consider swimming rather than kayaking? Because I know there's islands, so you had to get across, and you went across Loch Lomond as well to get to Ben Lomond. So did you ever consider swimming rather than kayaking?
Not really, because the previous record was kayaking, and then the record before that was swimming. So I had the option, and I choose the one I would enjoy more, which is kayaking. Like I can swim, but I'm not the best swimmer. So yeah, kayaking was always my preferred choice. Yeah. So yeah.
And was that always with someone, Donnie? Did you always have someone kayaking with you?
So from Mull to the mainland, I had a film crew in a canoe, filming for the adventure show. And then across Loch Lomond, I had my friend Ross Laurie join me, just for company and to make sure the kayak didn't get steeled and reared in when I nipped up Ben Lomond. So he had quite an easy sport role. He basically got to paddle across Sun Bay for a couple of hours and paddle back. So he probably had the easiest shift out of my whole support team.
That's right.
And then from Glenelg to Skye, Calray, it was probably the most dangerous crossing because it was so narrow and the tide run through there at like 10, 20 knots. So it was getting the timing right. I had a safety boat just purely for that reason, but I just kayaked myself. But that was only like a 5-minute kayak. Yeah.
Excellent. We've got just a comment from Andy O. He says, amazing achievement, Donnie. Well done. And he's got little pictures of wash hands. So well done from him. Borian says, working from home in August was made a lot easier by following Donnie's dot on the tracker. It was so inspiring in these uncertain times. And I remember when we saw you on the top of Ben Lomond, I said, lots of people are following your tracker. And I think you made a comment that, I've heard this wherever I go, and I feel as though I'm being stalked or something. So was it a motivation knowing that people were following you so closely?
Not really, no. I would say carrying a tracker was what was motivating me. I had other motivations that were motivating me through the lower point. So, for example, this is a challenge I really believed in. As I said at the start, but there isn't anything I really change. Obviously, if I couldn't get injured, that'd be great, but that's not realistic doing stuff like that. So, it's just the whole thing's good and enjoyable to a certain extent. Type 2 fun.
Yeah. And is there any one person or any person who inspired you to complete the challenge?
No, as I said previously, my motivation was I've always wanted to climb all the Munros in Scotland. So it wasn't me being inspired by one person or, that is more kind of my personal goal was, I've always wanted to climb all the Munros in Scotland. So that was the overarching kind of motivation. It was something I cared passionately about.
Yeah. Okay, we got a question from Douglas Gillespie about kit. In terms of kit, what was your watch of choice and what footwear did you wear? Amazing effort.
Cool. So watch of choice was a Suunto 9. Thankfully, I'm sponsored by Suunto. But that's the watch I would use anyway. I've always had a Suunto before I was sponsored by them. And again, same with shoes. I'm sponsored by Salomon, but before I was sponsored by Salomon, I ran at Salomon. Interesting fact, people love this fact that I trashed 7 pairs of shoes in 4 weeks. So they all went in the bin. I was mainly running in the new S-Lab Sense 8 soft grounds or the S-Lab Crossmax was a new shoe, but just because they're always wet and lightweight minimalist shoes don't really get on with being wet and in boulder fields and smashing your feet off rocks. So I went for 7 pairs of shoes. And they were the main shoes I was using. And that's kind of Salomon kit, running vest, depending on weather, long sleeve jackets, tops, shorts. The usual kind of kit.
Excellent. A little bit a different question, this one, and this is one that I must admit I wanted to ask as well. And this is from Highland International Church, and they said, you've mentioned in other interviews about the importance of your faith. In what way did it help you in this huge achievement? And also, I just wanted to pop on, before you started this challenge, you shared one of your favourite verses from the Psalms. Psalm 121, where it talks about, I lift my eyes to the mountains, where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. So could you tell us just a little bit about your faith and how that affected this challenge?
Cool. So I've said it in previous interviews before this that I've got a strong Christian faith and stuff. So, I've mentioned this in previous interviews as well, that I don't see myself as a runner. I don't define myself as a runner. So it kind of helps take the pressure off. Like, whether I was successful or not successful, I knew wasn't going to define me or make me, I wasn't doing this for applause or kudos or anything like that. I was doing this purely for me. On that, so that kind of gives me the security and kind of confidence to know, that's fine. And again, it's quite hard to explain. So obviously on the very remote days or when I'm feeling really low, I know I'm not by myself. I know I've got Jesus beside me. For someone who doesn't have a Christian faith, might find that hard to understand. And I can happily accept that because it's hard to explain myself. I've got a Christian faith, but it's a weird feeling. You just know that he's there to a certain extent. And then, where was I with that question? Rambling on. That kind of helps. And again, I believe everything happens for a reason. God's purpose is, if I was to be successful or non-successful, there'd be a reason behind it that I might never find out, but there would be some reason behind it. And it's more about accepting it and moving on. Obviously, I'd be devastated if I failed, but there would be some reason behind why I would have failed. Or, there's races like, for example, Tour de France. I got exercise-induced asthma. I failed. There was a reason behind that I've never really fully understood yet. But I know one day I might find out, I might not. But that's kind of my belief, and I kind of feel that helps me, to a certain extent. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think there was another point on the rounds where you quoted a hymn. You said the last 3 days have been mentally tough, but really happy to leave the Glencoe in 3 days. I can head north to the Mamors tomorrow, etc. And then you said you quoted, "Be thou my vision, be thou my battle shield, sword for my fight." And that was that a hymn that you were singing out on the hills, or was that just going through?
It was one of my playlists. So it was a song on my playlist, and it's kind of an upbeat one. It kind of motivates you, that, as I said, I wasn't alone in the hills. You know, I spent a lot of time in the hills by myself, but I wasn't alone, if that made sense.
Yep.
So it's one of these visions that, you know, and, you know, it's speaking about Jesus is there with you. So yeah, it was kind of that kind of idea that, you know, he had my corner no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you have these long days out as well, whether it's just one day or like you day after day after day, I think it does give you time to think and pray and to, you know, sort of think through what life's about, isn't it? And where you're going. So it gives you that time that you don't often get in a busy world.
Yeah, like I spend a lot of time training by myself, so I always have that time.
Yeah.
You know, training for this was like 20-hour day,
Yeah.
20-hour weeks and stuff like that. So yeah, you've always got that time to kind of contemplate and, you know, kind of, you know, soul search, you know, and it's kind of, you know, I believe there's more to life than this. And I think we're, you know, for me anyway, I believe I'm just passing through. There's more, you know, death's not the final thing for me. And, you know, as hard as it may sound, you know, actually beyond death might be better. It's hard to believe, like I'm petrified of dying, but, you know, my belief is I'm passing into a better world. Sorry for being so morbid.
No. And also, do you find that you have time to pray when you're out in the hills on your own like that?
Yeah, you pray, you kind of, you know, you appreciate God's creation, like, you know, you just look at the landscape, it's incredible. Or if you're like me and crazy enough to run for 48 hours and you look at the stars, like I had a really beautiful night, you know, just the whole universe is an amazing creation of art. You know, it's just like, it's stunning.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for sharing that as well. I think we've gone through most of the questions that are on Facebook, on the YouTube. I think there are a few people that had a couple of problems with the just watching it was buffering a bit, but the advice was to go back a couple of minutes and then it caught up, and so people have hopefully been watching quite smoothly, so that's been good. Those who are watching, this is Run to the Hills. We're going to do these live interviews once a month. So this was the first one with Donnie. We also do a weekly podcast YouTube, which comes out on a Friday. So it'll be good. And if anyone is watching who's not subscribed, if you'd like to subscribe, that would be really good, so you can see future editions as well. The last thing I wanted just to chat about in the last couple of minutes before we finish is just those last 2 days, because I was like most people, I was watching it really carefully, and each morning I'd look to where you were going. I'd try and look during the day and at the end of the day, and I just assumed with a few days to go you seem to be a day behind, so I just assumed you would probably be finishing in 33 days. And then I realized there was one night I went to bed about just before 11 and you were still going, you were still heading up. And then I woke up the next morning and you'd summited Ben Wyvis, which is a Munro I know well because that's quite close to where our girls live in Inverness. And we've been up there a few times. And you were there at 4 a.m. And then you carried on down, and then you carried on the next day. And then I assumed maybe you'd have a bit of a rest and then you'd finish sometime the next day. And then I get up the next morning and there it is, you've done it. And you had finished at 5 a.m. So just tell us about those last 2 days and the fact that you just went through the last 2 nights.
Cool. So that wasn't planned. That was never planned. That kind of just happened. So basically, kind of after kind of getting through a few big days after Sky, I was like, okay, could I make up this day I dropped? And I was like, okay, things going well, what I could possibly do. People know the Munros might make it easier for them to understand. It's like, well, I could just do my Monday schedule, which was Sleoch, Fisherfields and Angelic. And that's about 45k with about 4 or 5 minutes of climbing. So it's a big day. But if I do that and then get up early the next day, so maybe have a 4 a.m. start and do the Fannis, Ben Wyvis and the Ben Jerry group, which is 6 Munros there. Pardon me, that'd be a massive day. So that'd be like maybe 4 till midnight or 4 to 10. Have 4 or 5 hours sleep, get up and then do the last 4 Munros up north, which is quite spread out. So there's like over 100k of cycling. I think 130k would have been a cycling in 4 Munros. So that was my original plan. And Sunday night, finished early, as I said, in Torridon. Easy day, 3,000 meters of ascent, just basically a recovery day. And then, Sunday night, went to bed with that was my intention. Had good sleep, 10 hours in bed. And then it wasn't until I was like halfway through the Fisher Fields I started thinking, it's like, okay, the weather's meant to crap out on Wednesday, so the forecast for Wednesday was 50, 60 mile an hour winds on Munro tops with horizontal rain. So I started thinking, okay, well, I'm fresh at the moment. I've had a good sleep. Why don't I just carry on and do the Fanics and try and get as much done before Wednesday morning? I was kind of thinking about humming and hawing. It wasn't until I was climbing on Ancella, I was like, okay, it turned out like all the clouds had gone. I was like, well, it's a really lovely evening. It's nice temperature. I'm feeling okay, even though I've done a big day. I might as well go and do the Fanics, which is 9 Munros. And once you commit to the Fanics, you might as well do them all, because if you come out and go back in, you're giving yourself like an extra 2-3 hours work. So I phoned my wife Rachel and said, can you get my dinner ready when I come off Ancella? I'm going to have dinner and then go into the Fanics. So I got off the Ancella about 5 p.m. A horse and passed it down me, cycled up to the Fanics, which wasn't a big cycle, and then started the Fanics about just after 6 on Monday evening. And I said to my wife when I was leaving that, I might go and do Ben Withers afterwards. We'll see how I'm feeling. And kind of my theory was like, I'll just keep going as far as I can go until I sleep. Like, I know when I'm fresh that I can go for 48 hours because I've done it previously, so I'm drawing on previous experiences. Well, the big question mark was, could I do it after 29 days?
Yeah.
And I had no idea. So it was like, we'll just play it and see how it goes. So I did the Fanics, came off the Fanics, and then I was like, I'm feeling not too bad. So had a cup of tea, I think I had some food, and then cycled on to Ben Withers. Did Ben Withers. And came off that about 5 a.m. in the morning. I was like, okay, I'm not feeling too bad. Like, I know as soon as daylight comes up, I'll feel better because of your body clock. And daylight resets your body clock. It's like, okay, well, I'll lie down for half an hour because I had a cycle to do, wait for daylight to come up and cycle in daylight. So it was up the open road, which is quite fast. So started cycling at 6 a.m. And then started Ben Jerrick, which was fine, like new day, perfectly fine. And then got into Oakville Bridge about lunchtime, had some lunch, was like, okay, still keep going because it was daylight. And did Benmore, Sept and Carnival. And that's when it started getting hard. So this was like Tuesday evening, about 6, 7 p.m. And coming off Carnival, I was like really tired. Like I could do a half-hour nap. But I had a friend come and join me, and they were to cycle with me because I had an 80k cycle. And he was sitting in his car waiting. I was like, well, I can't really keep him waiting. So it's like, have a bit of food. And I'll force myself onto the bike. So onto the bike, that was fine. But that was quite hard trying to stay awake on the bike. And you're just like, oh, not nodding off to a certain extent. And then got to the next Munro, which was Ben Kilbrack after an 80k cycle. And this was probably about midnight. And I was completely done. I was like really sleepy. I was like, I could just do a power nap. But I had another 2 friends who had came up, who I thought had came up to run with me that night and we were waiting for it to run with me. But they were actually thinking I was going to be running in the morning. So I was like, I will see if Stephen Morris and Graham Morris are going to come up the hill with me. And they were like, yeah, we'll come up the hill. And then I said this evening, and they were a bit shocked. And I was like, well, I thought you